Her hair looks like it hasn't been brushed in weeks.
No, it's just natural. She's very clean.
And her skin, you can't tell me that doesn't make you uncomfortable. It's dirty. Do you dare to hold her hand, Jenna?
Her clothes are always clean, aren't they?
Are you still trying to defend her? Now it's your choice, being us or with that black girl.
I don't want to play with her anymore.
Good choice, Jenna. You'll thank me later.
Those are the words I want to bury at the root of trees, never to hear them again. I grew up in a small suburban neighborhood just outside Atlanta, Georgia. It was one of those places where everyone knew each other, and the summer evenings were filled with the sound of kids running around on freshly mowed lawns. My dad worked at a local factory, and my mom was an elementary school teacher. We didn't have much, but I always felt lucky to have a warm home and a family that loved me. Maya moved into the neighborhood when we were in kindergarten. I remember the first time I saw her. She was the only kid in class with big, bouncy curls and a warm, sun-kissed complexion. At first, I was shy, but Maya broke the ice with her bright smile and an offer I couldn't refuse. She held out a blue crayon and said, "Do you want this one? It's my favorite color." I took the crayon, and from that moment on, we were inseparable. We grew up together like that, side by side. Maya always had the most creative ideas, and we'd spend hours in the woods behind my house pretending to be explorers searching for hidden treasure, or building forts out of old blankets my mom didn't need anymore. Maya always made me laugh, and to me, she was irreplaceable. At school, we were a team. We'd always sit together at lunch, share snacks, and help each other with homework. Sure, we didn't look the same. I had blonde hair and blue eyes, and Maya looked completely different, but that never mattered to us. Honestly, I never even thought about her skin color until other people's words started to creep into our little world. When I think of Maya, the first thing that always comes to mind is her smile. She had this way of making everything feel like it would be okay, whether I'd bombed a math test or scraped my knee on the playground. Maya wasn't just my best friend, she was the person who understood me better than anyone else. And maybe that's why what happened next made me feel so guilty. Because deep down, I knew Maya deserved better. Things started to change in high school. Up until then, Maya and I had always been inseparable. But that year, I began hanging out with a new group of girls. They were loud, confident, and always seemed to know how to make people laugh, or cry, depending on who they were talking to. At the center of it all was Becca, the kind of girl who could make you feel like you belonged 1 minute and completely invisible the next. One day during recess, Maya and I were playing hopscotch near the swings. Becca and her group walked over, their shoes crunching on the gravel. They stopped in front of us, forming a tight circle that felt more like a wall. Becca crossed her arms and looked Maya up and down with this expression like she had just stepped in something disgusting. "Why are you even hanging out with her, Jenna?" Becca asked, her voice dripping with disdain. "Seriously, don't you think it's kind of embarrassing?" I froze. Maya glanced at me, confused but calm. Before I could say anything, Becca leaned closer, her voice sharper now. "I mean, look at her. She's not like us. You can tell, can't you?" Maya stiffened, her jaw tightening, but she didn't say a word. I could feel her waiting for me to step in, to say something. Anything. But I didn't. "Her hair looks like it hasn't been brushed in weeks," another girl chimed in, laughing. "And her skin," Becca added, her tone mocking. "You can't tell me that doesn't make you uncomfortable. It's dirty looking." The girls burst out laughing, and I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought everyone could hear it. "If you keep hanging out with her," Becca continued, "people are going to start talking. You don't want that, do you?" I looked at Maya. Her face was blank, but her eyes said everything. She was hurt. She was waiting for me to say something, to defend her, to tell them to stop. But all I could think about was how I didn't want Becca and the others to turn on me. Becca smirked, sensing my hesitation. So, what's it going to be, Jenna, she said, her voice daring me. Are you one of us, or are you one of them? The other girls stared at me, their laughter dying down, replaced by an expectant silence. I felt trapped, like I couldn't breathe. And then, before I even realized what I was doing, I turned to Maya and said the words I would regret for the rest of my life. I don't want to play with you anymore. Maya's eyes widened for a moment, and then she blinked, her expression hardening into something cold and unreadable. She didn't say anything. She just turned and walked away, her shoulders stiff, her head held high. Behind me, the girls erupted into laughter again. Becca clapped me on the back like I had just won some kind of cool competition. Good choice, Jenna, she said. You'll thank me later. But as I stood there, watching Maya disappear across the playground, all I felt was a deep, gnawing ache in my chest. I knew I had just done something terrible, something I couldn't take back. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about Maya's face, about how I had hurt her, and how I had let Becca control me. It felt like I had betrayed someone who mattered more to me than anyone else, and I didn't know how I was ever going to make it right. That night, I sat at the dinner table, poking at my food, without taking a single bite. My mom, as usual, noticed right away. She didn't say anything at first, just kept glancing at me as she cleared the dishes. Finally, when I let out a long sigh, she sat down across from me, folding her hands together like she was getting ready for something serious. Jenna, she said gently, what's going on? You barely said a word all evening. I shrugged, trying to brush it off, but my throat felt tight. I wasn't sure I could even say it out loud. How could I tell her what I had done? How could I explain the awful thing I'd said to Maya just to fit in with some girls who didn't even really matter to me? Nothing, I mumbled, my voice cracking. Mom raised an eyebrow, the way she always did when she knew I wasn't being honest. You know, I can't help if you don't tell me, she said. But whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Together. Something about the way she said that, so calm, so certain, made the words spill out before I could stop them. I told her everything, about Becca, about the things she said, and about what I had said to Maya. By the time I finished, my hands were shaking, and my eyes were full of tears. Mom didn't interrupt me once. She just listened, her expression soft but serious. When I was done, I buried my face in my hands and said, I feel horrible, Mom. I don't know why I did it. Maya didn't deserve that. She's my best friend, and I ruined everything. Mom reached across the table and gently took my hand. Jenna, she began, sometimes, when we're scared or under pressure, we do things we're not proud of. But the important thing is what we do next. Do you want to make this right? I nodded quickly. Yes, I whispered. But I don't even know where to start. I don't think she'll ever forgive me. Mom let go of my hand and leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant for a moment. You know, she said, when your grandfather first came to this country, he didn't speak much English. People made fun of him. They called him names, made jokes about his accent. He told me once that it made him feel small, like he didn't belong. But he also said that there were always a few people who treated him with kindness, who looked past all that and saw him for who he really was. Those people made all the difference. I stared at her, surprised. I had never heard this story before. Grandpa went through that? I asked. Mom nodded. And you know what he told me? He said, it doesn't matter what other people think of you. What matters is how you treat others. That's what makes you who you are. She paused, giving me a moment to take it in. Then she leaned forward again, her voice firm but kind. Jenna, you made a mistake today. But that doesn't have to be the end of the story. If Maya means as much to you as I think she does, you need to show her that. Not with words, but with actions. The next day, Mom woke me up early. Instead of our usual breakfast routine, she led me out to the backyard. The morning air was crisp, and the garden was still damp with dew. She pointed to the flower beds, where colorful blooms of all shapes and sizes stood together in the sunlight. "Look at these flowers, Jenna," she said. "Do you see how different they all are? Some are tall, some are short. Some are bright and bold, and others are soft and subtle. But together, they make the garden beautiful." I nodded, not entirely sure where she was going with this. "People are like these flowers," she continued. "We're all different in some way, but those differences are what make the world beautiful. And if someone can't see that, it says more about them than it does about the person they're judging." She looked at me then, her eyes full of warmth and encouragement. "What matters is that you see it, Jenna. And if you do, then it's never too late to make things right." Her words stayed with me the whole day, like a little light flickering in the back of my mind. That evening, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had to tell Maya how sorry I was. That evening, I rode my bike to Maya's house, my heart pounding harder with every turn of the pedals. I kept rehearsing what I was going to say. When I reached her driveway, I almost turned back. What if she didn't want to see me? What if I made things worse? But then I thought about the look on her face when I had said those terrible words. I couldn't leave it like that. I rang the doorbell, and the wait felt like an eternity. "Jenna," she said flatly. Hearing my name in that tone hurt more than I expected, but I forced myself to meet her gaze. "Maya, can I talk to you? Please?" "What do you want, Jenna?" she finally asked, her voice quiet but steady. I swallowed hard. I stumbled through my apology, struggling to get the words out. I told her how sorry I was, and how deeply I regretted what I had done. It was harder than I expected to admit out loud that I had been weak. "Do you know how much that hurt, Jenna? Hearing you say that? You've been my best friend since we were kids, and then, just like that, you turned your back on me. Because of them." Tears welled up in my eyes, and I nodded. She looked away, and for a moment, I thought she was going to tell me to leave. But then she let out a long breath and turned back to me. "Why did you care so much about what they thought?" I didn't have a good answer. All I could say was the truth. "If you are truly sorry, I will forgive you," she said. "Does that mean you forgive me?" She paused for a moment before nodding. Even though Maya had forgiven me, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Becca and her friends would notice right away that I hadn't done what they wanted. They'd see me walking into school with Maya, and I knew they wouldn't let that slide. As I got ready, I thought about what Mom had said the night before: what matters is how you treat others. That's what makes you who you are. Those words felt powerful, but I couldn't shake the fear that had kept me silent in the first place. When I arrived at school, I spotted Maya waiting for me near the bike racks. For a moment, I hesitated. It would have been easier to walk past her, to pretend nothing had happened and avoid the stares I knew were coming. But then she turned and saw me. Her smile was small and tentative, but it was there, and that was all I needed. We walked into the building together, side by side, like we always had before. The hallways buzzed with the usual chatter, but I could feel the shift as soon as Becca and her group saw us. They were standing near the lockers, and their eyes locked onto us like predators sizing up prey. Becca didn't waste any time. "Wow, Jenna," she said loudly, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I guess you made your choice." The girls around her snickered, and I felt every eye in the hallway turn toward us. My hands started to sweat, and for a split second, I thought about just walking away. But then I looked at Maya. She was standing tall, her face calm, but her shoulders tense. She wasn't going to say anything, but I could tell she was ready to take whatever came next. I wasn't. But I knew I had to be. I took a deep breath and turned to face Becca. "Yeah, I did," I said, my voice louder than I expected. "And I'm glad I did." The hallway went quiet. Becca blinked, clearly not expecting me to push back. "You can't seriously think this is a good idea," she said, her tone shifting from mocking to condescending. "Hanging out with her? Do you even know what people are going to say about you?" I felt my face heat up, but I forced myself to stand my ground. I don't care what they say, I replied. Maya's my friend, and if that bothers you, that's your problem, not mine. For a moment, Becca just stared at me, her mouth slightly open as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then she scoffed and rolled her eyes. Whatever, she said, waving me off like I wasn't worth her time. You'll regret it. With that, she turned on her heel and walked away, her friends trailing behind her. The rest of the day wasn't easy. Becca and her group made their usual snide comments whenever Maya and I passed by, and I could feel the curious stares of other students lingering on us. But Maya stayed by my side, and that was all that mattered. Years passed, but that moment in high school stayed with me. It wasn't just the day I stood up for Maya, it was the day I began to understand who I was and who I wanted to be. On the day of our graduation, I stood backstage in my cap and gown, clutching the speech I had written. I had been chosen as one of the student speakers, and while I was excited, I couldn't help but feel a little nervous. The auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and proud families. Somewhere out there, I knew Maya was sitting with her parents, waiting for the ceremony to begin. When my name was called, I stepped up to the podium and took a deep breath. The lights were bright, and the sea of faces blurred together, but I reminded myself why I was here. This wasn't just about me. It was about something bigger. I started my speech like any other, thanking the teachers and families who had supported us and reflecting on the journey we had taken together as a class. But then, as I reached the middle of my speech, I paused and looked out into the crowd. I want to share a story, I said, my voice steady. It's not an easy one for me to tell, but it's a story that taught me one of the most important lessons of my life. The room grew quieter, the buzz of side conversations fading away. I made a terrible mistake. I hurt someone who meant the world to me because I was too afraid to stand up for what was right. I let fear and pressure make me do something I regret to this day. I scanned the audience, searching for Maya. When I found her, she was looking back at me, her expression calm and encouraging. That gave me the strength to keep going. That mistake taught me something. It taught me that who you are isn't defined by the way others see you. It's defined by the choices you make and the way you treat the people around you. It's defined by courage, the courage to stand up for your friends, for yourself, and for what's right, even when it's hard. I want to thank the person who forgave me, even when I didn't deserve it. The person who showed me that forgiveness can be just as powerful as standing up for what's right. Maya, you've been my best friend for as long as I can remember, and I owe so much of who I am today to you. There was a beat of silence, and then the crowd erupted into applause. I felt my cheeks flush, but when I saw Maya smiling through tears, I knew I had done the right thing.